Mayor and Trustees, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to comment regarding the proposed local law amending the village code in regard to maximum residential gross floor area. As you know, beginning in 2003, the trustees, acting on the recommendation of the Planning Commission, made a fundamental change to the village code, instituting gross floor area based on lot size, not residential zone. In 2016, Mayor Epley and the trustees requested the Planning Commission to examine residential building patterns in the village and make recommendations on any changes to the code. The Commission thought it was important to have better substantive data on this issue and also to engage the public in the conversation. After a request for proposals, Studio AB was engaged to research building patterns, participate in public workshops, and write a report with recommendations for potential changes to the code. In the last 2 years, the Commission has had 3 separate Saturday workshops. Architects, lawyers, contractors, other practitioners, members of village boards, all were invited to participate along with interested members of the public. We have also met with the building department to understand their experience and ideas. All this input was immensely valuable and has resulted in the Commission forwarding to the trustee over the last year and a half proposed changes on setbacks, pyramid laws, and accessory buildings. In many ways, tonight's discussion is about the 4th major component of the zoning approach. The Commission is your think tank and represents a wide range of views and backgrounds. Tonight with me is Joe McLaughlin, Laura Davini, and Eduardo Simeone from the Commission. We try as best we can to reflect the overall public interest rather than any one group or faction. What we heard from both the experts and the public in the workshops overwhelmingly was the belief that there needed to be further restrictions on the size of new residential construction. We have attempted to balance that with making sure that the village can also meet the desires of the market to have houses that meet contemporary needs. I now want to introduce Glynis Berry of Studio AB, who will briefly summarize the zoning analysis.
Charlie, can you hear him? Because that mic, I believe, comes out.
I can hear.
You can hear him? Okay.
Could we let us know if you could. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So basically, we were asked to take a look at existing conditions and compare that to the code. And we were very lucky in that the town of Southampton had a great database that we were actually able to both query and map. So it gave us a great tool to work with. And of course, you're a historic community, so development isn't really prescribed. So if you look at the zoning districts, there's a large variety of size of lots. So one formula, you know, it's difficult because you've got a lot of different conditions in close proximity. So what we did then is we looked at what is the size of the building, and we used the town's data, and then we compared that to a minimally compliant lot size for each zone to see what we had. And if the very first bar in each zone is the code max for that minimally sized lot. The next one, the red one, is actually the average of existing. So you can see that the existing homes are significantly smaller than what the max would be. And then the next 3 bars compare what's been happening over time. So the green bar was before 1940, the purple between 1940 and 1990, and then the last bar is between 1990 and 2015. So you can see that there has been a significant rise in the size of homes being built in recent years. And we also looked at some samples that were passing through the building department as we were doing the study, and we were finding that most of the applications were building to the max allowed by code. So you are seeing a significant increase in how people are using their properties. And these are some of the actual sizes for the different zoning categories. The first column is the average existing livable space as defined by the town. And you can see the difference in the next column for those last, that 25-year period. And it's a significant increase ranging from 13 to 72% more. And if you look at the max that happened, you're seeing between 3 and 5 times the size of the average size.
Let me interrupt for just a second. So I think one of the things that we always thought, and we heard a lot, and we sort of assumed was that what was happening in the village, we were returning to, if you will, the pre-1930 building pattern. And so you look at houses on streets like Post Crossing or Elm that seem very large, and the thought was what was happening is we were going full cycle and building houses the same size. That turns out not to be the case. In fact, the houses built in the last 25 years, and I would say, and if you look at the statistics, particularly in the last part of that, are actually much larger than those houses from that era. So we're building houses larger than have ever been built in the village, across the village. And that's really, I think, why residents are, what residents perceive turns out to be more accurate than we thought. And that's why we did the study, because we wanted to see if our belief, which was that this was just a full cycle, we were coming back to the beginning cycle, was the case. That's not true. So houses are actually, now, you can obviously find a house in the estate section that is 25,000 square feet. It was built in 1885. But if you look across the average is actually very, very, very different. And that's, I think, why we're hearing the issues that we hear so much, which is the average is actually much higher than it's ever been.
So going back to what you just had up there?
Yeah.
So you're saying could we go back to that? On an R75, between 1990 and 2015, the maximum living space was 5,000 square feet on a 7.5 acre property? That seems huge to me.
No, you have to realize that's in a zone, so you get a range of sizes within a zone. So you are going to have lots that are bigger than the 7,500. And you also do have some pre-existing conditions where you have 2 homes on one lot. So, so that doesn't mean it's illegal, because all the lots aren't that size.
So basically, that 5,000, I'd like to know how many of those are in an R75. I mean, because it seems huge to me in an R75.
But that's because you get a range.
So again, the nature of our village, which is very different, is that and the reason we went from the zones to the lot size in the way we do gross floor area is on any street. The street may be R75 zone, but the lots may be range very, very much in size. So what happens is just, you have a street that's R75, but you have a very large house because it's a bigger lot. Now, the other thing I would note is, and this is a lot of what makes the conversation so complicated, this is based on how the town looks at livable space. Our gross floor area, which is not necessarily true throughout the rest of the East End, our gross floor area doesn't include many of the things. For example, there's attic space that would be included by the town if it's livable space, accessory buildings that would be included by the town if it's livable space that we would not necessarily include in this floor area.
We do include.
Well, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, depending on the size of the zone.
But on the first one, go back to the first one where you showed what was original. Okay, so, no, not the next one, with the back. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is on R20, the first diagram that goes up.
Right.
That is what we have currently.
No, that is the code max for the minimally sized lot for that zone.
Okay, I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
I thought you said that's what we currently have.
The second one, the red, is the average of the existing. So it's significantly less than the code.
Okay, now I'm glad we clarified that because I was a little confused over
I
that.
know, it's confusing.
But
and
Nancy-
it's-
But the last bar is what we currently have.
That's, the last bar is what we currently have, but I was looking at the first bar is what we currently
No,
have.
no.
last
And the
bar
last
is-
bar is the one, is what's happening now.
The last part is what's happening
What's
now.
happening
It's
now,
not
what we have.
currently have.
Right. The red one is the current condition.
So the GFA in an R20 is roughly 4,100. That's our GFA allowed. Is it 39? 39. Thank you. And then what we're seeing in an R20 is just a smidgen below that. Okay.
No, the red is the average of existing as of, 2 years ago.
So the difference between the average existing in the red and the 1990 to 2015 average existing,
It's fairly small, right. So just to say, maybe
Well, it's actually
intuitively,
not that
let me actually try to explain. So what you see is really, and this is, what we talked a lot about in the workshops, is the village is significantly underbuilt in the context of what the code allows across the village. And so that's maybe most extreme in the R120 right now. And we're seeing a lot of that in the last year, actually, in the R120, where we see very large houses being built that are allowed in the zoning, but are very different than what's historically been there. So what you see is in the last 25 years, and this shows in most of the zones, you're building fairly close to what's allowed. That's very different than if you look at what's there now. And so one of the reasons I think why in the workshop people felt we needed to do things was there's going to be a very large inventory of new houses over the next 20 years because of how underbuilt the village is. And so we've done a lot. We've done the pyramid law, we've extended the pyramid law, we've dealt with setbacks, we've dealt with accessory buildings, we've been doing a lot of things to try to control that because we know, and I think, honestly, as one of the people, I think there are two of us here tonight who were there in 2003 when the code was changed. I can say personally, I had no idea how big the inventory of houses would turn out to be. And so I think that's one of the things that happened. We now understand what we thought would be a few houses has turned out to be a wave of houses and is likely to continue to be a wave because the gap is so big.
Can I just go back to
But
that?
I have
Can
a
wait,
question.
look?
Go ahead.
Actually, yeah, just, yeah, okay. So the first bar, picking on R20, is the code max allowable, correct?
Yeah, for that minimally sized lot.
For that, correct. So then the second bar, which is the red, is the average of all homes
Right.
in existence. The last three are trends over those timeframes.
Right, those are the subsets of the red. So those three last ones are subsets.
Right.
and
So
these
I-
are, sorry, Nancy, you were first.
So in the R20 zone, I remember when we upzoned in the village a number of years ago, it was way before I was on the board, we upped it to 3-acre zoning, I believe. Isn't it 3-acre zoning in certain areas? Yeah. So we upzoned it, but that doesn't mean that if you have, you could say, okay, so everything now is 3 acres in the estate area, okay? But it's not.
Right, right.
So the
Exactly.
fact of the matter is, if you have a 2-acre property sitting in a 3-acre zone, they only get to build according to the square footage of that lot.
Correct.
Exactly.
So they'll never get to 16,000 square feet because...
Correct. That's
because-
absolutely correct.
Right.
But-
So the the differential in the chart here that you're showing also is an effect of the size of the lots within the 3 acres.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah.
So they may never get to the 16,000
Right, it's
square
going to be
feet.
varying very much
Right.
on your size of lot. And conversely, you may be in that zone but build bigger because your lot is big, not in the R120, but obviously in the R20, for example, you may have a bigger lot within the R20.
Right. And the R80 and the R120 have more lots that are smaller than their minimum than any of the others.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. There are a lot of non-conforming lot sizes.
Why don't we keep going, because I think some of the other stuff may
And
be
just
very
one question, this is actual square footage of the lot, not a builder's acre.
helpful. Right.
Okay.
You go by the square footage of the lot.
Yeah, I just
And
wanna
this
make sure
is
that's how they
repeating what was just said, in that we then compared the livable building area based on the town records to the max that would be allowed by the code. And we did it on an individual lot basis. And we basically found that 73% of the lots are only developed to 70% of their potential. So that means most of the lots could be significantly larger than they are now.
Or people like to have a yard.
Exactly, but that seems to have gone out of fashion lately.
Might like having a yard, you know, I mean, it's true.
So this is a chart that compares the existing code with the proposed, and this is the straight math that just looks at the formula compared to the lot area. And so basically, except for the smallest ones, you're seeing a 2% difference in your area, which, you know, has a range from 250 to 2,000.
The first one has the same exact amount.
The first one has the same because on the left you have a maximum which comes into play, and by coincidence, without the maximum, it was exactly the same. So it almost shows you that the intent of the original code was exactly this formula.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting.
So let me talk a little bit
Oh,
about
I see what you're
this.
saying, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just
10% is 750 plus 1,500
Right,
is
right.
250.
So, you know, when we started looking at gross floor area, one of the things that I think we felt was we had done an enormous amount of work over the last 14 years, scary it's been that long, trying to control what was happening in these smaller zones. But, you know, if you track what's been applied, you know, the applications to the ARB and what the building department has been seeing, increasingly the issues we see are actually now in the bigger zones, where we had done much less to try to control what was going on. So we thought it was important to modify the formula in a way that would actually have more impact in the bigger zones than the smaller zones, because the smaller zones, I think, between the work we've done and the setbacks and the period law and everything else, there actually is now much more control. Interestingly enough, and I had no idea this was the case, the town of East Hampton at the end of 2016 did exactly the same thing. They were, not exactly, but very, very close. They went from 12 plus 1,600 to 10 plus 1,600 in their GFA because they saw the same thing happening. It was the bigger lots where more was being built. So the idea tonight is really, this is trying to control to a large extent what's happening in the bigger zones, and that's where the bigger impact is, because you're still permitting a very large house with a lot of rooms to be built. This is not in any way creating a house that is insufficient for a modern lifestyle. I think, you know, getting smaller than the 2,250 square foot house is really beginning to make it much more difficult to have a sufficient house. So this is really geared towards, you know, I think most of us would say within 13,500 square feet of gross floor area, which we'll see in a minute, is a much, much larger house, an actual living area. Even those who have many kids can somehow manage to live within that house. And so we think that has much less impact than in the smaller zone.
And also because people think, well, that's the max that it can have for living space. Well, in fact, your code is quite lenient in that it allows you to use the cellar as living space, but that doesn't appear in the town calculations. And then the other issue is your attic space. You have probably one of the most generous codes relative to the half-story allowance. So in this chart, what we did is we added for a one-story and a two-story idea, we tried to calculate all the building area that you could have. So it includes the garage, the cellar, the attic, and the accessory buildings. And so you can see that it's significant. Even in the smallest parcels, you can build over 4,000 square feet. And then, as a last step, we said, okay, let's compare that to the village of East Hampton. And as you can see, even with this change, you are allowed to build significantly more than in the village of East Hampton, ranging from 7 to 19% more.
Let me just say, I'm sorry, let me
I'm
just,
having trouble with the GFA. Okay, so what it says is GFA 10% plus 1,500 plus garage, cellar, accessory. So what you're showing there is on a 7,500 square foot lot, to include the garage, the cellar, and the accessory, you're allowed 5,243.
Right.
Is that true of East Hampton's too?
No.
Okay, so
So,
technically, East Hampton on a one-story, it doesn't include the
No, let
garage,
me-
the cellar, or the accessory, but they can build to 3,850. Is that what it is?
It includes the cellar, but they have a cap on accessory structures where you don't, you only have a limit on the size. So, and also their attic half-story.
Explain the cap to me.
Pardon?
Explain the cap to me that East Hampton has.
They have 3 different codes. They have the GFA, they have a maximum square footage for accessory structures, and they have the lot coverage.
So if they have a maximum for accessory structures, let's say, I mean, we have it too. I mean, we, 500 and something, it's not maximum, but we have a square footage for an attached or a detached garage.
Right, but that's for, you can
And then
have
if it's over
10
that, it gets included, does it not?
Right,
Yes.
right, it's included in the lot coverage, but you don't limit the, how many structures you can have.
right, so, and let me make clear, I just want
Well,
to say
we
something.
limit it now because it's included in the gross floor
Right, in the
area.
smaller lots,
And the smaller,
the accessory
under-
buildings are included, but not the garage.
So back to East Hampton, I need
Right,
to know,
right. So
would
in
you
East
say
Hampton, you
they,
don't get, for example, in East Hampton, you don't exempt the garage. So that makes a big difference, obviously.
so they include that in their gross floor area, is that what you're saying? Okay, not in their lot coverage, but in their gross floor area. Okay,
So
so that,
now let me just, I want to say something because I think it's very important. We have always said, and I continue to believe, what makes sense in East Hampton, given their building pattern, is not what makes sense here.
I agree.
So we have a much more diverse building pattern. So in East Hampton, you tend to have individual, in a typical village street in East Hampton, particularly north of Main Street, you'll see lots that tend to be very consistent in size.
they are.
We don't have that. So I don't think the comparison to East Hampton is to say we should be doing what East Hampton should be doing. I think it is a comparison that shows that the market can easily adjust to what we're talking about, because we're still much more generous than you can build elsewhere. So this should not be an issue where the market can't build these houses. Obviously, you see, you go up and down the streets in East Hampton, there are houses being built. And in fact, the median value for houses in East Hampton is actually right now slightly higher than the median value of houses in Southampton. So I think it's just something the market can adjust to. So I don't want this taken as we should be doing what East Hampton is doing.
Right.
I just think we just want to show
I
that
just
there's
want, I
an
needed to get
ability
a clarification on
to deal with it.
where we included all of that, and it's 5,000,
Right.
and they didn't include any of it, and it's 3,700. I needed to understand that.
Yeah, and the attic is a big,
Right.
Right.
is another big
Well, the
issue.
attic on the smaller lots really is minimal in my mind, because you can't get the height.
It's
You
much,
can't get the height.
You're absolutely
So
correct.
you really can't even think along those terms. I mean, if somebody's building something and a builder is redeveloping a particular property, they can go deep and you can use the cellar, but you're really never going to be able to use the attic now.
right,
I
it has
don't see.
much more impact on the bigger lots,
Right.
obviously, where you can, that half
And don't
story becomes
forget,
much more
as,
helpful.
which in the estate area probably doesn't matter that much because there's so much money spent there, but if they do the third floor, they have to sprinkle the entire house. So, I mean, there's added costs of having the attic included in the gross floor area, so.
And as was already mentioned, because one of the issues raised was what about value? So this is the averaged assessed values when we did the study according to zone, and also a high to low value factor. And as you can see, the village is pretty healthy. I don't, and that's existing conditions, so that's with 70% underdeveloped in a way. So I
Well, I'd say
think,
that 2 million in the R12.5 is probably a brand-new house. Because it would have to be, I can't,
no, that's average assessed value.
oh, average. Mhm. Wow.
That's average assessed value.
But on a pure GFA, if we were to narrow it just to the first and second floor, excluding the attic and all the other add-ons, which we don't include any and other people include most of, we're still more liberal.
Yeah, but let me also say, you know,
With the
again, because
GFA
I think what we're going to propose tonight is, what we propose tonight is fairly modest. One of the reasons that we did that is we, again, in this village, as opposed to other villages, we have a history of taller houses and attics being used.
Right.
So, you know, there's reasons why we treat things somewhat differently in this village. And so what we really propose tonight is a fairly modest change. It's to try to shave a little bit off in a way that I think will, combined with the other things that you have approved over the last 18 months, the pyramid law and the setbacks and the accessory buildings, we think putting them all together should help to manage the growth in a way that hopefully will make people feel that they're having less impact from their neighbors.
Do you still think they'll be building?
Yes. I think, we can't, I think zoning is a tool, but zoning doesn't control the economy, and for all the reasons that we know, including the fact that many people want to live differently than they lived a long time ago, people are going to continue to build new houses. We anticipate that looking at our lots, how underbuilt they are, the way the world's changing. People are going to continue building.
Do you think people will still be talking about it?
I assume people have been talking about zoning since zoning was created in 1902, and now
Yes, I think so.
forever. What I will say, I think, as a somewhat countervailing trend, I think we're beginning to see on the East End some people deciding that larger houses are not necessarily the lifestyle they want. I think you'll begin over the next, and also as our demographics in this village change, the demographics in this village, in terms of people in their older years, like myself, are getting much, much bigger. And I think, someone at that age maybe doesn't feel that a 20,000 square foot house is an absolute requirement to have a decent life. And so I think that will begin to change, but I still think you're going to see a lot of new construction.
I think we'll still see new construction.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think people will continue to talk about it.
Right.
And I think people will say, oh my God, look at the size of that house in comparison to the small house that was taken down. It's just going to continue. It's a change of landscape, and that's what people get upset over. It's a change of landscape. Our community is changing. But also, you have to figure the local person is selling their house, somebody is deciding what they're going to do with it, whether it's a builder or it's a person who's buying it who decides they want to add on to it or whatever they want to do with that property after they get it. But then you have to say, well, why? Why are they doing this? And I think that what happens is we have a lot of people who come from the city. We all know that. People come out here. Their life has changed, and their life has changed because they can really do their work from here. They can go to their house, they can work with technology today and work out of their house, and this now becomes their main dwelling. Their apartments are smaller, they're coming out to a bigger house. That's why it's been so popular. That's why the builders have built what they've built, because they're accommodating this group of people. And, I'm not saying that this is so drastic that, that's not going to continue to happen, because I think it will continue to happen. But that's where this has all come from. And I don't want people to think that by reducing this, it's going to stop it. It's never going to stop it, unless, of course, you do this little thing where, what is the small house on HGTV where you roll it up, put it on the, right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, I want to say very strongly, it is not the intent of the Planning Commission to stop building from happening. We all know the world we live in. I think on the other side of it, as I think you all know, and the work you've all been doing over the last several years, and the great role you've played in encouraging us to look at these issues, there's a role zoning plays in retaining community character, and that's the hard part, because it's not the job of any individual builder or owner to maintain community character. That's something we have to do, and everyone benefits from that. That's why, if you ask me, why is property in Southampton worth so much and property in other towns in the East End not worth as much? There's a community character in Southampton that people pay for and want to live here. And that's the role of zoning, to try to make sure that's maintained while all these new houses, I agree with you, absolutely will be built.
And it's not just community character. I mean, it's the scale and the compatibility of many of the homes. It's the history. It's the 7 miles of beaches, as former Chief Sherry would say, 7 miles of gold. It's our access to airports, to transportation, to New York City. I mean, who wouldn't want to come here? It's a fabulous place.
Also, we have one of the most beautiful business districts. I mean,
Yeah.
that no one could ever recreate, because it is so magnificent and the architecture is stunningly beautiful.
And because of the zoning that you approved a few years ago, it will stay that way. Yes.
But Paul, I guess my only addition is so it's a confluence of small changes that will hopefully address one issue that I've heard over and over again since I've been in this position, which is people feel that they are existing homeowners and they're being hemmed in from their neighbors from the right and from the left, and that their peace and quiet, rights are gone because they no longer have sunlight in their backyard or even a cool breeze, and they can't park on the street anymore. So we've received lots of feedback. I don't know if all of you have, but I've received feedback over and over again about the unabated development of very large houses that really impacts the neighbors.
Right, and I understand that. What I would say to some extent is, you have passed a number of laws over the last 2 years. I think the full impact of those has not been felt yet. I think it takes a while. As you see, for example, the larger setbacks begin to play out, I think that will create a real change. As the pyramid law now is, across more lots, that will begin to create change. As the accessory buildings begin to be counted, it seems suddenly everyone who had a 7,500 square foot lot decided they needed a pool house. That's going to begin to change. So I think all of these put together over the next few years, I think we're very hopeful that you'll actually begin to see some of that impact at least moderated. Thank you.
Any questions?
That's it?
Rich?
Just want to make sure, Paul, is that your presentation there, is that something that's printable and can
Yes.
be submitted for the record?
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will submit that.
Good, thank you.
Is anybody from the public that would like to add to?
Good evening. My name is Fred Weinfurt. I reside on Roscoe Drive in the Village, and I would just like to commend the Planning Commission's recommendations this evening to suggest that we reduce the size of homes being constructed in the village. One of the other issues that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if this is part of the recommendation, is to include the square footage of garages if they're part of the main structure. I know a particular case that I'm quite familiar with, where the person is pushing the envelope as far as it's an R20 zone, half acre, and they're going for the max of 3,900 square feet as far as the house is concerned. But also as part of the structure is a garage, and I think, don't hold me to this number, I think there's forgiveness of up to about 500 square feet if the garage is attached. So this proposed dwelling at 3,900 square feet, the maximum, also has a 500 square foot garage attached. So the visual mass of the structure is really 4,400 square feet. So I think when reviewing these things and reviewing the code, my suggestion would be if the garage is part of the structure, to also include that in the square footage to help reduce the mass of the structure. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, please.
I understand that you guys can't do anything with this tonight because it wasn't advertised. So March 8th will be your official meeting for this. What do you,
We'll do a
what do you expect your
resolution.
timetable to be?
as far as
to when this is actually going to be passed and...
You want it adopted? March 8th?
That's what I'm thinking. But there was something, somebody mentioned that it wasn't going to actually go into play until April 1st. I'm just trying to figure out, will the people have to have been in front of the Architectural Review Board? Will they also already have to have a building permit? How is it affecting people that are applying to the Architectural Review Board right now? So I'm just trying to get, I have to know what to tell my clients.
no, that's a good question.
Well, the proposed law right now is drafted. It says the local law shall apply to all applications made for a building permit after April 1st.
Okay. And that's what you think that'll be what
That's
gets...
what's in the law right now. So unless you have some suggestions for the board otherwise, they could consider that.
So an application to the building department is actually an application that you make, and that's what puts you in front of the Architectural Review Board. So it's not actually having a building permit in hand.
No, it shall apply to applications made for a building permit after April 1st.
Okay. Good question.
That's the language here. I mean, the board can consider a change.
That makes sense.
At least you have a date.
Correct.
Well, I would like to encourage you to pass this law. 10% plus 1,500. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Can you just state your name for the record?
Oh, Edward Simeone, 181 White Street, Southampton,
Thank you.
to New York. I just want to start with a little bit of background. You know, I put in an application for a building permit in 2004 for my home. It's a 3,600 square foot home. At the time, on a R20, which is what I have in a half acre, you could build 5,000 square feet. So I was well within the limits, and it's what I needed. It was 3,600 square feet. It's the house that I wanted. It's just fine. In 2007, we finally passed the new laws, 12% plus 2,000, and then you could build a 4,400 square foot house. So I still had a house that was well within the regulations. If I needed to make any adjustments, any changes, I could do it, and not a problem. A year later, that was reduced to 12% plus 1,500, and it made it a 3,900 square foot house. Well, on 3,600, I'm still fine. Then we passed another regulation where accessories structures have to be included into the GFA. All I have is a shed on my property, which is an 8-foot by 10-foot, 80 square feet. So I'm still okay, you know, 3,680 versus 3,900, I'm still okay. Now you want to pass a new regulation that's going to reduce the 3,900 by 400 square feet. Now I am non-compliant. Suddenly I'm a bad hombre. My house is too big. So I think that this is becoming significant and excessive in trying to reduce the homes, even for homes that are really quite compliant. 3,900 square feet, I don't think was too much on a half an acre. Also, I'm a little confused as to what is the problem we're really trying to resolve. The first thing that we heard is the neighbors complaining, and it's normal that they're going to complain because when you have construction, it's a scar on the neighborhood. It's noisy, it's ugly. Houses go up. They don't look so great because they're bigger than what's around them. But you know, once they're landscaped, once they settle into the neighborhood, they become part of the fabric of the neighborhood. And I think a lot of people, once they were complaining about a house, after a year or 2 or 3 years, they don't complain. They say the houses look quite fine. There was, I remember an example on Moses Lane. There was a big ruckus about a very big house going on Moses Lane. Now it's landscaped and it looks fine. You don't even know it's there. My house, I got a complaint when I was building. I actually got a stop order because my neighbor said, your house is too high. Once we looked at it and we went to the IRB, it's a 28-foot high house. It's well within the regulation. So neighbors will complain, but sometimes these complaints aren't necessarily justified. Then the other problem was large homes and small lots. Okay, that's something I can work with. You know, maybe on the smaller lots, some of the houses are too large. It's also true that on a smaller lot, the development rights are a lot bigger than the larger lots. So that's something I was willing to look into, and in fact, I also proposed something that would allow for some adjustment in the smaller lots, but leaving the larger lots alone. Then 3 sessions ago at the Planning Commission, this new idea came up: large homes on large lots. And we only had the 1 session to discuss it, and now it's in front of the trustees. And quite frankly, I think this is a matter that can require further discussion in the Planning Commission in order to see if this is really a valid consideration, because quite frankly, on the large lots, I don't think it was ever a problem for the houses that we have. It's true that the zones are not homogeneous. There's different size lots, so I can understand maybe in some instances you can have a large lot next to a smaller lot, and it could create some inconsistencies, but then let's look at that. Let's not penalize the whole village where the problem does not exist, where the lots are more homogeneous, because they are, and around me, all the lots are my size or larger. Let's not do this village-wise. Let's look at it a little bit more carefully and see where the problems really are. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else would wish to make a comment?
Hi there, Paul Bolo. I had one or a few questions. One concern would be, I've noticed with some of the applications, most of the applications right now for new homes within Southampton Village and the different zoning districts are to full FAR, floor area ratio, GFA, gross floor area ratio, whatever you want to refer to it as. You know, one of the concerns obviously is when someone puts an application into full GFA, gets approval for a permit, and prior to even demolishing the existing house on the lot where the application was approved, you know, you have a request for a variance to increase the already approved house that hasn't even started construction, let alone the house to be demolished, been demolished. So I realize the concerns and I appreciate all the detailed analysis. Just wondering if Mr. Travis or the architect that came up earlier, if they've looked at, you know, the ramifications to the ZBA. You know, does this now kick changing the building and zoning code within the village? And I'm not taking a stance one way or the other. I think it's a very complicated issue, right? There's a careful analysis and hours of calculation have gone into it. But does this now kick a bunch of the issues of people that have the demand? There's a demand, obviously, for these massive houses or these larger size houses, whatever you want to refer to them as. Does this now kick it to the ZBA for them to have a substantial increase in requests for approvals in excess of what zoning allows? And I'm sure I have a bunch of other questions right now, but I'm not going to burden you with any more of them. Thank you.
So what you're asking is if someone comes along and, you know, wants to build a 13,000 square foot house, but on a property that they would have been allowed to before and now they can only build on, you want to know, does that kick it to the ZBA? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm
confused as to what you're saying.
My question is, if you're under current zoning right now, say you're allowed to build a 4,000 square foot house, because I think where most of this proposed change in building and zoning occurs is within the smaller districts, the half acre, you know, the 7.5, the 12.5, the R20, and so on and so forth, because houses are so close to each other and people are impacted substantially by the construction, 1 and 2, by the proximity of the houses. My question is, now when you start scaling back what's allowed on these lots, have they looked at the cause and effect of the increased percentage of applications to the zoning board of appeals to increase, right?
Well,
it'll go conforming conforming.
Well, the question, I think, really is how many properties will be declared non-conforming? What you're saying, Eduardo, is that your house now would be really non-conforming, which means if he wanted to do anything to his house, what you're saying would have to go to the ZBA in order to get any sort of relief. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
because his house now is under the...
Not really. I'm not talking about pre-existing non-conforming lot size or pre-existing
No, he has a
non-conforming
house.
conditions as far as their house. I'm not talking about like an existing house that's pre-existing non-conforming, such as the last planning commissioner discussed. I'm talking about applications that come in that are conforming, that get approved, and then there's a subsequent amendment, right, put in the form of a ZBA application, Zoning Board of Appeals, that basically says, I don't want to build a 4,000 square foot house, I want to build a 4,400 square foot house, because now the new building and zoning code doesn't facilitate the needs of what I want to build on that lot, right? Does it, are we now pushing?
I don't see that's ever going to happen. I don't see that it's going to happen.
You cannot
No.
approve zoning that is greater than what is allowable.
Yeah, they can't.
The CBA can allow for changes to the property, sidelines and things.
But not in excess of what?
You cannot go into
The building
excess
zone,
of
right.
the zone.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to clarify.
Could we have our counsel
There have been-
clarify, please?
I mean,
If I can clarify,
we would love you to.
there's two types of applications. One are, as Nancy mentioned, the pre-existing non-conforming, which right now this code would create non-conformities. So maybe the gentleman's case, the question would be in the future, if he ever wants to expand, the only way he would be able to expand if this law makes him non-conforming is to seek a variance. On the other hand, one who is seeking to exceed the code in the first instance, he's not non-conforming, he just wants, if he's allowed 4,000, he wants 4,400, as you expressed. He would be subject to the rules of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I can tell you my experience with the Zoning Board of Appeals since the gross floor area has been adopted is there's been a rare instance where they may have granted relief to that kind of application. Now, on the other hand, they have granted, and also very limited cases, expansions with pre-existing non-conforming situations. But I can tell you that they don't take it very lightly that, someone seeking to exceed that which was the legislative intent. You have to show the legal tests to prove that you're entitled to that variance. And I can tell you that not many cases have been successful in doing that.
Great, thank you for clarifying. My other concern would be that now the houses that have been built in the last decade are going to increase in value, that have already been built to current zoning, and the houses, because they'll be pre-existing non-conforming, they'll be pre-existing non-conforming to the new building and zoning code.
No, they won't. How would they?
Well, they'll be conforming to when they built them, but now that if you change the zoning within, right?
So you're saying they're larger than what's allowed right now? That's
Right,
what
well,
you're
if you
saying?
change the buildings and zoning code today, a house that was built yesterday to full GFA would not be
That's true.
allowed today, right?
That's true.
So that house would be more valuable than something that was built after the fact to full GFA. So I think it's a really careful thing to look at, because anyone that didn't build, say in the last decade, that left their house as it is, that wants to expand, or wants to sell it for that matter to a speculator or someone that wants to build a new house, it adversely affects their land value. And
Well, I think the Planning Commission's report, which they did this careful study, shows otherwise. In fact, that is a function of zoning, no matter which kind of setback, gross floor area, whatever you do. The argument always is it will affect my property values or rights. It certainly may affect the rights that you have to do under what's allowed under the current zoning, but it's always a function of the zoning regulation. That will be an argument. I think the Planning Commission has studied that effect and showed that property values are not going to decrease because we imposed a zoning regulation in particular. In fact, gross floor area, after it was adopted 15 years ago, has been amended 3 or 4 times, as was expressed by this gentleman. And it hasn't stopped the values or otherwise. And I think that was one thing we asked the Planning Commission to look at carefully, and they did. So just to let you know, it would be probably good for you to maybe talk to Paul and look at what they did study.
I look forward to looking at the data.
And there's a number of alternatives, by the way, that were considered by them. This formula here was one which this board believes is easier to present compared to some of the other alternatives they've looked at in comparison to other codes, some of which were discussed earlier.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Paul.
So I have a question now that Paul has brought this up. I know that we looked at the charts and it showed how many houses were built to a certain size.
Right.
But did you figure out that we will have some houses that are non-conforming? Because Eduardo's is non-conforming and he's on a half acre.
Yeah,
I think you're on a half acre.
First of all, it's just one thing I want to state very strongly. The Planning Commission does not rule on individual houses. And we actually, in our meetings, try to stop people from bringing up individual houses because I don't honestly think that's the right way to do zoning. Yes, if you look at houses that were built to the maximum certain zones and you reduce GFA, obviously you're going to have some houses that are non-conforming. That's why we have a zoning board of appeals, and that's been true. That was true when we changed the zoning back in 2003 the first time you created nonconformance. So yes, there will be non-conforming houses, and particularly when you approved, I think, 6 months ago, the change to accessory buildings, for example, that created non-conformance. When you approved the change to setbacks, that created non-conformance, and that's why we have a ZBA process. So if someone has a house that is 400 feet larger than will be permit under the zoning, and he needs to build a porch or he wants to build another wing, he can go to the ZBA and explain why he should not be subject to the conditions. And the ZBA, I would tell you, having watched it, has from time to time said, yes, you are non-conforming, but because you built when you did, and you've shown a real need, you get that variance. They don't do it all the time, but they do it. But yes, we did look, and we tried to. It's very hard without going through, individual houses to look at exactly which ones are non-conforming. But yes, there clearly will be non-conformance. And I think, actually, I know everyone thinks it's going to be in the smaller zones. I think you're going to find it actually much more in the bigger zones where people have been. For example, I know everyone thinks the estate section, people's perception is very different than reality. People have been building very large houses, and there will be cases where they now would not be permitted. That's always been true, by the way, in the estate section. You have 25,000 square foot houses in the estate section. They would not be allowed under current zoning. They stand, as we know recently, some of them get approval by the ZBA even then to expand. So, without commenting on the particular application. So yes, there will be probably more in, actually, I think the R40, R80, and the R120 zones where you now have actually non-compliance.
Good. Any other comment?
I'd like to just say thank you because I feel that you worked very hard on it. Linus, thank you so much. I think your approach was a really interesting one, and yeah.
It was very informative.
Very informative.
Yeah. We appreciate all your efforts. And because of those efforts, we're going to make a resolution to adjourn this for the purpose of renoticing, and we'll make a motion to, and I'll read it from here, to reschedule the meeting on March 8, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Southampton hereby directs that a public hearing shall be held on March 8, 2018 at 6 o'clock prevailing time at the Southampton Village Hall, 23 Main Street, Southampton, New York, to hear any and all persons either for or against a local law entitled Local Law Amending 116-17.1-B and 116-17.1E to further reduce the maximum gross floor area of a dwelling. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
So, and then I apologize that this, we had a glitch in scheduling this, noticing it properly meeting. But those things happen. I'm going to blame it on the press, just to, make myself feel better. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Eduardo, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Good for you.
Moving along, we got communications to the board. We have the fire department muster.
Do you want me to read that, or, yes? I respectfully request the use of Pond Lane and Agawam Park for our antique fire department muster on September 8th, 2018. I would also like to request the west side of the Coopers Beach parking lot and the grass area across the street on Meadow Lane, September 7th and 8th, 2018, for muster-related activities. Second request would be for the use of Downs Family Park on June 2, 2018, for our annual awards banquet from Christopher Brenner, Chief, Southampton Fire Department.
I think we've done this every year.
Yeah,
Yes, it's protocol, just so they have to request it so we can approve it. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request from Chief Brenner.
And second, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Move to resolution.
And if you could read the resolutions.
So I'll read the resolution, and then when we get to the,
The whereas one,
yeah.
the long.
So resolved that the reading of the minutes for the public session 2 of January 23rd, 2018 be dispensed with, and that those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and that the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. On a motion, please. And second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. I wasn't here for it, so abstain.
Number 2, do you want me to read this and then go through the fund?
Yes.
Okay. So resolved that the claims for the warrants dated February 8th, 2018 totaling $234,779.12, warrant number 12, general fund, $1,275, warrant number 15, trust fund, $9,265.23, warrant number 9, expense trust, and $13,972.50, warrant number 9, capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the period from January 19, 2018 to February 1, 2018 be audited and approved.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion, and second, and then I will read these off.
So we start on page 2, I think.
Yes. You know what, that is my fault, because I printed them early when Steve was here this morning. Okay, but
We'll follow you.
okay. So on page 2. So Aries Design, $5,000. That is for the completion and presentation of preliminary cost estimate. It's the balance due, $5,000. Arrow International, $1,210.64, medical supplies for ambulance. Atlantic Coast Embroidery, $9,567.25. ambulance duty gear and apparel. Atlantic Salt Incorporated, $6,008.48. Sorry, I read off the top number. The total is $9,230.23. That is salt for all the recent storms. And then we go to Cast Productions, $2,575. Video recordings for all meetings. Devitt Spellman Barrett LLP, $3,127.50. That's the Rosewood Realty, 472 First Neck Lane. First Presbyterian Church, $3,000. That's the parking lease for February 2018. Fowler's Garden Center, $1,169.21. Miscellaneous supplies, mostly parts. Fundamental Business Services, $2,824.50. That's December 17 bill for the Justice Court billing. Gulls LLC, $1,312.89. General Code Publishers Corp., $8,629, and that's the Laserfish assurance plan for Building Inspector's Office. Global Montello Group Corp., $10,431.13. That's fuel, the ultra-low sulfur diesel. Ranger, $2,076.57. Miscellaneous supplies, including a bandsaw, gloves for the highway department, and bags of ice melt. Hampton Truck and Auto, $1,139.42. That is miscellaneous central garage supplies. Herrick Hardware, $1,477.73. Various departments or miscellaneous supplies. J. Parry Enterprises, $2,625. That is emergency snow removal for the January 4th, 2018 storm. Johnson Electrical Construction Corp., $1,350. That's signal maintenance bill for December 17, 2017. Lewis RCF Energy, $3,232.03 heating oil. Morgan Auto Supply, $4,003.09. Miscellaneous supplies for central garage. Patricia Munn, $1,285.80, Medicare reimbursement. National Grid, $4,081.05, miscellaneous departments, gas bill. Norsec and Son, $10,854, miscellaneous departments, garbage. Office of State Comptroller, $19,029.50. That's Justice Court. Portion of fees from the Justice Court that goes to the state. Physio Control, $1,044.60. That is the subscription data plan for Life Packs ambulance. PSEG LI Collection Services, $19,105.41, miscellaneous departments, electric bill. Revco Electrical Supply, $1,149.22, miscellaneous supplies for various departments. Riverhead Building Supply, $3,072.40. Also, various departments, miscellaneous supplies, we got. South Fork Asphalt, $2,160, that is clean concrete dumped. Southampton Youth Services, $7,500, 2018 membership, various departments. Sprague Operating LLC, $11,000.78. That's 6,000 gallons of 87 octane regular gas. Student Roth Consulting Inc., $1,087.50. Historical Consultations, January 2018 bill. Studio AB Architects, $1,375. Proposed code changes for November and December 2017 bill. Anthony Tohill PC, $3,550. Professional services, January 2018. Vincent Toomey, $1,395.85. Professional services, January. Town of Southampton comp, $25,140. So the village, they pick up the leaves and then go to the town leaves pickup for the waste management. Trias, yeah. $4,633.20. That's a hopper, a salt spreader. I was actually asked Kenny Zay, and supplies, central garage, including snow blades. Verizon, $3,491.89. That's the bill for miscellaneous departments. The same with Verizon Wireless, $1,020.43. Also bill, oh, I'm sorry, it should have been the bottom number, $2,394.68. That's the bill for miscellaneous departments. Verizon Special Projects bill. No, that shouldn't have been highlighted, my fault. Vermeer, $1,725.08 for a flywheel. That is also central garage. WB Mason, $1,599.02. Miscellaneous supplies, various departments. Wright National Flood Insurance Company, $13,980. Flood insurance for Coopers. Banjo Rascals July 4th Parade, $1,275. U.S. Industrial Corp., $13,972.50. And I highlighted it on the one that's on the desk. It's fire department, and it is, I don't have the description. And it's the fire facilities reserve expense. Any
Rascals, is that for this year, or is that for
That's for, no, that's for this year coming up. They're starting to, Bob Grisnick is starting to get contracts for 4th of July parade. Bands and contracts. But that's for this coming 4th of July, I believe this year is a Wednesday. So the parade will be on that Wednesday. Any discussion? Can I have a motion? So all in favor? Okay, number 3, whereas the Suffolk County Water Quality Protection and Restoration Program, WQPRP, provides grant funding on a competitive basis for water quality projects defined in Article 12, Section 2B of the Suffolk County Charter, and whereas Lake Agawam is included on the current 2016 New York State Section 303D list of impaired TMDL waters, and whereas the Village of Southampton has an interest in improving and protecting water quality in the various water bodies of the village, including but not limited to Lake Agawam, and whereas the Village of Southampton intends to submit a proposal to the Suffolk County WQPRP Review Committee, which has established a deadline of February 9, 2018 for proposals, and whereas the proposed project will provide for design and development of drainage structures in the vicinity of Agawam Lake to capture stormwater, and whereas the proposed project is supported by the Lake Agawam Comprehensive Management Plan, and whereas the Suffolk County WQPRP program provides grant funding up to $200,000 maximum in support of selected projects, and now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of the Village of Southampton hereby states its support of the Agawam Lake Stormwater Remediation Phase 5 project, and be it further resolved that the village will support the required minimum 50% matching funds toward the total project costs supported by the Suffolk County WQPRP should the project receive funding approval from the county, and be it further resolved that the village board authorizes the mayor or his designee to sign any and all necessary documents pertaining to the project, including but not limited to an intermunicipal agreement, subject to review and approval of the village attorney, to participate in the above referenced program.
Can you read that again?
Sure. So, do we get a motion? Do we need a roll call on this one?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second. And I just wanted to say in discussion that,
Doing this already.
yeah, this is a third-part series of our efforts on collecting stormwater before it gets to Lake Agawam. And this is really a way that we can possibly get some additional grant funding so that we can continue to do our projects on collecting it. We've done Windmill Lane, we've done by Bowden Square, and we've done some on Pond Lane and off of Culver Street.
So my question is that since we've done that, are we submitting all of that paperwork by tomorrow? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I believe it's
All right.
all set to go.
Ready to go. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Number 4, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approve the use of Agawam Park by the USGA to stage a U.S. Open party in the park in conjunction with the Village of Southampton on Friday, June 15, 2018, and Saturday, June 16, 2018.
I'll make that motion.
Motion and second.
Second.
And any discussion?
Yes, when is it? What time is it? Is it in the evening? It would have to be.
I don't have any details at all.
Well,
on that.
I'll provide some details.
Okay.
I had spoken to Mr. Grisnick in reference to it because I felt we should have the CBA okay to make use of the park, which he thought it would be a great idea. It's great that most of those members are golfers, so that sort of helped us along. The USGA, in conjunction with American Express, is going to have a marketing program for village vendors and retailers, and this is an attempt to, on their, I think that's their final days. Rich, you probably would know
Yes.
more. That's the
Well,
end.
it's the end of
Father's Day
it.
week.
It's
That's the
Father's
end
Day
of
week.
it.
Sunday's the
Father's-
final day, but Friday and Saturday of that final
Friday is the
week.
village election.
They're going to have vendors similar to Southampton Fest, and where the trophy's going to be displayed there. They're going to have all sorts of programs going, promoting golf, and Southampton Village is really the host for them. You know, we aren't giving them the Agawam Park as use of that. We're hosting them in the park, which is an important thing to understand, and I think it would be great for the village of Southampton and all the stores and shops and restaurants and,
I think it's wonderful.
yep.
Because for the last couple of US Opens, no one came, it just seemed like no one came into the village.
Yeah, but that's
It
what
was
I felt.
all over there, and people either got in their car and left and went back to the west or wherever they were. We've never felt any part of it, and I think by doing this, Michael, this is a great idea.
And we're working with, hopefully with free rides to get people into Southampton so that they can shop or get something to eat and can go back and
USGA stopped into Village Hall today inquiring about the banner.
Yeah.
So we gave them
yeah,
some instructions.
they're going to put the banner up, I think, on both sides, or just,
I believe so.
Yeah.
They're going to firm that
Yeah.
up. They'll be back in there.
so,
Village election that day, Saturday?
Yes, it's Friday, the 15th is the election, 9 a.m.
Friday.
to 9 p.m. Friday the
This-
15th.
Is there any time limit on what the PGA is doing?
I'm sure it'll be-
Probably in the afternoon, I would imagine, and
I
it'll
think
be
it's-
lighter later,
I
so.
think they're still working on the details, you know, that they were,
Yeah.
more importantly, they wanted to make sure we were okay with having it there.
Fear of it, yeah.
And, I mean, like you said, it's a great idea because the USGA has taken, they got more involved in the local communities where they host these events, and in the past, the village, you know, it's evidenced by they took up office space on 2 doors down from us, which they really started doing only a few years ago to prepare for the opens. So, you know, they have, you know, they're our neighbors, and they've domiciled in the village for their business operations. So, if I remember correctly from the meeting, Michael, that, you know, the details are still going to be forthcoming.
Yep.
But it was kind of like using the park, so for people who either weren't going to the open, or people who were going in the morning or the afternoon and wanted somewhere to go, on the flip side of that, this was a place to go and still be, I think, you know, have some visual monitors and so forth, you know, to watch the open and things. So there's some, well, again, highlighting our local village businesses, so.
I believe the last open was 2004.
Correct. And that was part of the discussion, to keep and encourage
Yes.
business and people coming into the village.
Great.
So, and all in favor?
June 15th.
Number 5, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the appointment of Nicholas Palumbo to the Save Committee. Can I have a motion?
I'll move that.
And a second?
second.
And any discussion?
Well, maybe we
What
should
are his
just...
qualifications?
You want to explain yourself?
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6,
All right, you didn't have to wait for that.
congratulations.
Welcome, Nick.
Number 6, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following schedule of dates at 6:30 p.m. for the 2018 concerts in the park. Tuesday, July 3rd at Agawam Park, Wednesday, July 11th at Agawam Park, Wednesday, July 18 at Cooper's Beach, Wednesday, July 25, Agawam Park, Wednesday, August 1, Cooper's Beach, Wednesday, August 8, Agawam Park, Wednesday, August 15, Agawam Park, Wednesday, August 22, Agawam Park, Wednesday, August 29, Agawam Park. Can I have a motion?
Make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
And any discussion?
How many years has that been, Bill? Bill was the one who established that.
And I think we started in 1986 or 7.
Wow.
And it is
Wow,
just,
isn't that great?
it's such a followed thing.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's not just people in the village, it's people outside the village, and it's, what a great thing.
And they call the village hall,
Yep.
wanting to know the schedule or who's playing tonight at the,
Right.
but I always thought it was 6:45, so I stand corrected, it's 6:30. All in favor?
Aye.
One of the best attended ones on East End.
Number 7, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the performances of Shakespeare in the Park in Agawam Park on the following 2 dates: Friday, August 24, Saturday, August 25. Can I have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
And a second?
Second?
And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And number 8, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following payments from the Capital Reserve Fund subject to permissive referendum. So that's the U.S. Industrial Corp., the Fire Facilities Reserve, $13,972.50. And a motion, please. And second?
Second?
And any discussion?
No, but I think he's just balancing it out.
Right, exactly. That's why I didn't have I was
Right.
panicking. And all in favor?
Aye.
We move to the discussion items. The property tax cap override, evidently scheduled public hearing for March 8th, 2018.
I believe that's what was discussed. I haven't seen
Yeah.
the resolution.
Steve wrote on his notes here.
So what's the date?
March 8th.
March 8th, the same as the,
So we should make a motion to
we need a motion, do I have to?
Schedule a hearing, yeah.
schedule a
Okay.
hearing.
So can I have a motion to schedule a hearing for March 8th for the property tax cap override?
I'll make that motion.
And a second? Any other discussion?
Yeah, I believe that's just the 2% that gives us the ability to go.
Yes,
If we
that's
do,
right.
Doesn't mean we actually will do it, but it gives the ability
Use it, but it gives
to
us the
utilize it
permission
if
to
need be. It's a formality we have
Have
to
it in
go.
the,
Yes.
right, in black and white, correct. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, tax sales certificates. So, as it has been the recent years, the village now buys all the tax sale certificates, and they're not for public sale anymore. So I need a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I believe we've done this every year. We buy back the
Yes.
defaults. Yep, and it ends up working pretty well for us.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
For the village/taxpayer.
That resolution is for the current tax year,
Yes, yes.
last year.
For last year, for 17 into, right.
2017.
15 to 18.
All in favor?
Aye.
First Neck Lane stop sign. Trustee Hattrick, would you like to?
That gentleman that has been asking us to make various sign improvements, and particularly with
The yield sign?
it's now a yield sign, and he claimed that there was a couple of near misses with pedestrians at that intersection of Hill Street and First Neck Lane, and that we should replace it with a stop sign and replace the yield sign that is currently there. And I think it's a good idea, and we should do it. And
Yeah, he is correct, because I have seen people assuming that the car coming down First Neck Lane is going to come to a stop, start to walk off of the edge, and they don't stop.
This car is routinely stopped if you're in the left turn heading west, because you have to, but you're right, heading right. It's
just a little extra protection, and so I'll so move it.
It's a yield sign.
Do we have to do anything with Gary, the other thing first, or we? I don't know.
Question would be, already in the code. Is it in the code?
What, as a yield sign, you mean, or that's?
Well, the code, to be enforceable, would have to have it designated in the code as a stop sign being in that location, so.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, so you would schedule a local law to amend the code.
Oh, really? Wow.
Hearing, and after the hearing, you could adopt it.
Maybe we could take a look and see if it is in the code?
Yeah, I'll do that, and then maybe put this on for second call, and if, while you're in executive session, I'll research it, and if it is, then we'll come out and schedule a public hearing.
Eileen, I just want to thank you. You had some long resolutions to read.
I
still want you to read that one again.
I love my numbers.
Would somebody... And I just want to announce that Mr. Funch has a new baby girl granddaughter.
Oh,
his first.
This is exciting.
Steve called me last night.
Yeah, he's so excited over it. And
Very excited.
I'm excited
that's why he's
for
not
him.
here.
That's great.
And somebody else said somebody...
Chief Cummings' daughter
that's right.
has a child.
Chief Cummings, who isn't here again tonight, had another grandchild. And, I will say, from having grandchildren,
The
they're the
intersection
best.
first.
Yep, you can enjoy them, and then they go home.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll be on First Neck coming north,
The best part.
Yep.
so it's in the code.
So moving ahead from that, comments from board members. Trustee Yuzgrensky?
Trustee, yeah.
Don't need to amend the code.
So is that something still to look at?
I'm looking at the code right now, and there is a provision under Section 11037 for stop signs, and there is an indication here that there's a stop sign on First Neck Lane headed north at the intersection of Hill Street. Supposed to be one there.
So we should, it doesn't even...
So you don't need an amendment to the code, you need to direct Gary to
put a stop sign
up.
Could you, no, we don't need anything, just direct, if you would make a note to direct Gary to do it.
That was one of those Romo things, I bet. That was a Romo thing.
Yes, yeah.
It's
more snowmobiling for him.
I know, when I tell you, how can
So,
know he's done.
As far as it would be on the
I mean, maybe, who knows what's him, but.
east side.
Yes, yes.
East side hitting
Correct.
north.
Yep.
Stop sign. Okay, so it's already in there. That's good news.
Turning to a yield.
Trustee Yaz, comments?
I know you were part of bringing us some of these people up there. Thank you for that. Very informative. The two presentations, certainly on the noise thing, I think there's some room we can really do a lot of work with there because there are some trends there other municipalities have done. And again, I want to thank the Planning Commission for the presentation he did, Paul Travis and his crew. And I also liked, again, perception is everything, and he was very clear in pointing that out. The perception of what people think actually is going on, and what has happened sometimes doesn't jive. And also, he pointed out too that it's been a moving target, and that it has been addressed with public input many times over the past 10, 15 years plus. He pointed out several incidences, not just in the past year, but back in 5 years ago and 8 years ago, where and one of the trustees, one of the other commissioners there was Eduardo, pointing out Simeone, how he's been, he kept track of that, and how, of course, it just affected his property. So I think it's worth noting that, it's been recognized in changes to scale, I think a lot longer than people realize, is really what and it even reminded me, because I was around for some of these things, and I go, oh, that's right, yeah. So, and we're adjusting even more so, and I think that they are working very strenuously to fill in the gaps where we miss each time. So I want to thank the two groups that came up, and extremely informative evening, and thank you for the attendance, the people that came. So, that's all I got.
Trustee Allen?
I would have to agree with everything that was just said.
Sorry.
I think it's good that you initiated this study a couple years back and have moved on it in a very, you ponder and you listen and you take in a lot of village input, so it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's really with data and good feedback, so that's good. And the only other piece I would like to add is on the theme of free park concerts that everybody loves. We have a couple of free things offered by the Rogers Memorial Library. One is the Ellen Johansson and Marlene Markad, a four-hand piano concert. It's free this Sunday at 3. And the SAC is showing a screening of Growing Farmers. It's presented in conjunction with the Peconic Land Trust, and there's going to be a discussion afterwards, but a lot of good free things offered by the village.
Trustee McGann?
Okay, so at our last meeting, Father Constantine Lazarakis came to talk with us about the possibility of doing something for young people, young adults, not necessarily the young children who would be going to our playground, but like the teenagers. And he wanted us to reach out to the schools and maybe have put together a committee of either teachers from the school or guidance counselors or whoever we could get to be on our committee to come up with something that would be good for young people. And afterwards, when he left, you weren't here, Rich, but we talked about how it's kind of a difficult thing because, and I'll go on to tell you what I found, but most of these kids, they don't want anything organized, or at least that's been my experience, and that even a lot of the shopping malls are saying that the amount of young people who are going to their shopping malls, they're not there anymore. They don't come because they don't socialize. They socialize now through their iPads and their computers, and they play computer games, and they're sitting in their house while they're doing all of this. So that has changed. But taking all of this still into consideration, I did call over to Dr. Dino's office and told them what I was looking for. I spoke with the secretary there, and she said, oh, okay, that's really terrific. Let me speak with him, and I'll get back to you, and I haven't heard one word. So I will be calling back again to see if we can get a group of people to see what maybe suggestions they might have. Then I looked into SYS, which is our wonderful facility on town facility on Majors Path. And SYS offers youth and adult soccer and basketball leagues, softball and baseball, dance classes, karate, indoor track and fitness center, and fitness classes and world-class public squash facility, all for these children to use. They also have local organizations such as Stages, a children's theater workshop, which gets involved over there, Future Stars Sports Camp, Music Together, the Southampton Town Youth, and much, much more. They also offer at SYS Super Soccer Stars soccer clinics, basketball clinics, snag golf, I don't know what that is, but jump bunch soccer clinics, squash clinics, fencing program, archery, karate, sewing classes, flag football league, and Joy Dance Academy. These are a lot of things that are offered, and I really would like to know how many people take them up on it. I don't know. Because for us to create a facility and then not have it be used is something that I just can't even imagine.
I will tell you, Nancy, probably 20 minutes, half hour before this meeting, Liz at the library reached out to me and said that there was a group there that would like to give their input.
Oh, good.
On,
All right.
you know, so you might want to touch base with her. She said she'd get
Liz,
in
what
touch
is
with
her
us.
last name?
Liz's last name
I can get
is...
it from you.
Can I just add a couple of things to that? Because I'm familiar with Father Constantine, and, you know, when he was coming up here, I knew he was going to come up. I told him I wouldn't be available. I wasn't going to be at the meeting. With all due respect, Nancy, yes, the children nowadays, it is a lot more technology-based with how they do utilize their time.
Unfortunately.
However, I have a father of 2 teenagers. I will unequivocally tell you it is not the only way. And malls, still knowing that my daughter just went up to, when she goes to Smith Haven this particular time with a bunch of her friends, that being used as a social gathering has not gone away. I can assure you that, having been in there in many different states. They still gather. There are children here that are gathering, and I've personally seen it in the summertime. You look at the Rite Aid parking lot with the bicyclists and the skateboarders. So they're here. I think one of the things that the father and other people were talking about, and that's really what he wanted to do, is I believe, and as the mayor just pointed out, is get a group of people. And one of them that has given me a lot of feedback as well is Kimberly Radigan, Officer Radigan, who's our school resource, SRO, a school resource officer. And she's one of those people. So they already have an unofficial group, if you will, of collecting data and
We
feedback.
need to know their names.
Yes, and that's where, actually, the mayor and I were talking about, yes,
Right.
of getting a committee together, which I volunteered that I would actually spearhead, along with these names I just mentioned, of getting actual real things together. Because the one thing I've asked, and I've mentioned to you in the past, and I've mentioned to these very people, I said, that's great. If you don't like what's being proposed, then come up and offer something. And so they go, okay, and that's what they are going to do. And one of the things that the father and other people have said is not so much, and you point out, you're right, there are a lot of organized activities. SYSE clearly offers a lot of programs, and the library as well. My kids have used those. My wife has taught sign language there as one of them. So I'm familiar with that as well.
That's great.
I think what they're looking to do is not so much an organized, but
It's unstructured.
an unorganized, unstructured place. Because, I get a lot of people will tell me we build something, and again, I'm for doing things, like a skate park, like a BMX, things that utilize the activities they are currently doing, unsupervised, and in different areas in the village. That's a study I would like to see done. I would like to see that, and I know that's what they're going to request. But part of what I find interesting is when people say, well, it's going to bring people in, or it's going to bring certain... And my response to that is always that. You're not bringing anything, and they're already here. Just go around in these parking lots and, patrol. I have asked the officers, well, chief's not here. They can show you that, we're trying, and what the father was mentioning is that they're here already. It's giving something. And yes, SYS, but at the end of the day, that is on Major's Path, as you point out. It's in North Sea, whereas the village is the epicenter of our entire community, and this is where they gravitate towards in the summer months. So
I think one of the reasons why it was put in North Sea is because we don't have the space for it in the village.
Well, that's what's changing now, because we have a lot of CP. That's now different. Agawam there, the most. So that's what's different, and that's why now I think it's very... the timing of it is very fortuitous that, you're right, there have been requests for this in the past, but we haven't had space. But now we have very good fortune through CPF, and space is becoming available. Now, again, whether these actually fit the parameters to do things, but it's a healthy discussion. And that's, again, really precipitated by the fact that we are having potentially land and a lot of work you've been doing with investigating CPF properties. We may have more so coming down the line. So that's where I think we're it's not even so much what we have, but what's coming possibly down the pipe with properties.
I
When I
do
was-
have a list of people that have reached
Oh,
out
good.
to me,
I'd
which I
love
will give you, and some of them are very interesting.
Okay, but one of the things when I was doing some of this research, there was a talk about a skateboard park in North Sea. Is there a skateboard park in North Sea? Because I don't know where it is.
Somebody says there's something at SYS. I haven't confirmed that myself.
Because they kept referring to the skateboard park in North Sea. And I'm
I
like,
think it is
I think,
SYS.
Right.
I think there is something there. I don't know how large it is, whatever. And I don't know how well utilized it is, to be honest with you. I don't know.
now, I know that there's a really nice one in Riverhead.
Stotsky Park.
I passed the one in Riverhead, and I thought it was great, and I remember years ago having a conversation with Tommy Lewinsky about it, and he said that he felt it wasn't used that much.
Stotsky Park, and depending when you go by, it is used because they have a facility to do, hockey, floor hockey, and the skate park. Look, is it used 24/7? That's also the beauty of it, is the fact that I think a lot of the very the misconceptions, like, oh my God, we're going to have all these hoodlums and round-the-clock noise. That actually proves the point that it provides the outlet for it and the access, but it doesn't get used as often as people are always fearful of. But I've been by and I've actually attended some events there. It is a well-used facility. It's a well-planned, well-used facility. How often? But it's used for what it's intended for. And I think that you pointed out, and that actually is a good point, that could quell some people's fears. That, oh my God, if we build this, they're going to come. Again, already here, it's putting them in a place that's organized, monitored, okay, and centralized. I think that's what the message of, and the reason why Father Constantine is so knowledgeable, because again, one, he is a village resident, he lives here. He has kids in the school system and the scouts, and so forth. His wife, Anastasia, works with the student, the very youth. So they really have their finger on the pulse of what they think is lacking. Plus, with the town creating the opioid task force, they sit on that. So they're hearing the feedback from the very kids. Quite honestly, Dr. Dino, I don't really expect a lot of feedback from him. And I know, no offense to that.
I wasn't expecting feedback, but I was expecting maybe some suggestions of people that might.
You got more suggestions, Father. He didn't have time to elaborate, but that last meeting, the first one they went through, the kids came up with suggestions. And one of them was a village resident who, a youth, who basically said in the meeting, give me something to do, give me somewhere to go. Not necessarily organized, but, and we've all recognized it. It's nothing new. It's just been swept. I think it's just been put off and put off. And I think there was just some ignorance. So I think people just don't think we have an issue with it, and it's a falsehood. And I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And I know what they do. I know what they do in the winters and the summer and spring and so forth.
What do they do?
Well, it's in the summer, my son's riding his bicycle around, okay, and if they're not working, he caddies, but it's finding a place to go to. And it's usually outside of somebody's house, but the mere fact, and they go to the park. They use the park, so they're going there.
Which park do they use?
Hang on. That's why that's always important that I was going to use that for other things, because an officer will tell you that it's already there, it's easily monitored, it's a quick sweep. So that's kind of what you want. You want to bring them to where you can easily watch them as opposed to having them being scattered about.
Well, I don't think we know what we're going to put in there, but it's worth reaching out to those people.
No, but I mean, as far as that and all the different properties coming up, and that we already have, I think is really what it boils down to. But no, I'm excited that it brings up the discussion. People that have been waiting on the sidelines, I've had many conversations with, about, what about the team, what about the team. The skate park, quite honestly, I know it scares the hell out of people. Because they think, I was just down in Surf Expo trade show down in Orlando, and they have a large skate park. And I can show you the picture of the people that it attracts, and it's not as scary as people think. I was watching it as I stood next to the deputy sheriff, who has two of them in his neighborhood. So, I think there's things that we can address. I think anyways, and quell the fears.
Well, I think you have to be very careful where you put a skate park if you were to put a skate park any place.
Clearly.
I mean, you could not, in my mind, put a skate park over an agri.
No, not even, nobody would even recommend that.
We have the next-door neighbor
Yes.
complaining about the zip line
Yeah,
being
no,
too
no.
close to his house. Can you imagine a skateboard park?
Not even, no, more quiet activities for that. But certainly, no, not by any stretch of the imagination would I or even anybody really. I mean, I wouldn't mind it, quite honestly, and I know some people wouldn't, but that's not happening.
I don't think a skateboard.
And it's not appropriate perhaps for that space, but again, we have some other areas that it might.
But we do need to reach out.
Yeah, we can do that.
Or a bike.
No, I don't have any objection to
BMXing is
that.
quiet.
Thank
think
you for
it's-
all your efforts on the park.
It was not much, believe me, but
No,
it was
there was a lot of
something.
efforts.
Yeah.
I
But
know you
No, but it's
work-
working in conjunction with that, I mean, it's all,
I just feel that, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, and you have children, and my son's fully grown, and so, but I remember, when he was younger, and, if you had offered them a place to go, they wouldn't have gone there. They would prefer to go to somebody else's house where the parents were not home.
They're still going to do that.
So-
No, that hasn't gone away either, but it's
Right.
still tougher. There are certain restrictions, and there are things that even kind of prevent that as much, and laws, So where to go, again, is not like building a structure and saying between 7 and 9, because again, they do that. I mean, the school does stuff. They have skate night. My daughter goes to those. That's well on a Friday night during the school season. Badminton is huge. I think that's something we can look into using badminton because it's quiet, and they have the league in the school.
It's been a while since I've been on a skateboard.
Those are one of
Me too.
many suggestions. Those are the more active ones, bicycling and skateboarding.
But what I hear both of you is getting a group of people together so that you can
Yes.
brainstorm on all
Yeah,
these.
Yes,
right.
and the father, Constantine, that spoke would be clear one of them, and a few others, and others that have spoken to the mayor to get a think tank.
It'll be good. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Bill?
Two things. One, I've been on the edge of my seat now for 2.5 hours waiting for Alan McFarland to come up here and say something, and so I hope you don't let us down, Alan. But the other thing is this.
You ruined his build-up.
We should have a special award for anybody that can...
Endures us that
That's right,
long?
the endurance badge or something to get for scouting. The other thing I was going to say, these people complaining about helicopters and so on, and is there anybody in the world who's in charge of helicopters, coming out of metropolitan New York, and that can do something about this, or should we tell somebody thanks but no thanks? There ain't a god darn thing we can do about this problem. But it seems to me, I sympathize with them, but I don't know what the hell we can do on our own, put up a sign that
Well, the CFA,
don't fly over, what's in Northville, and no hovering. Yeah,
But you know what, I listened to them and I thought, okay, fine, so you're on the North Fork, they're coming along, they're crossing over where you are, they're coming over our way to land at Meadow Lane. Let me tell you, I have a brother who's out in Noyak now, and the helicopters that are going over their house, they're not alone. It's everywhere. The helicopters that are going over their house heading to the East Hampton Airport is like vroom, vroom, vroom. They're like every 5 minutes. So they're not alone. They made it sound as if they're the only ones. I have a friend who lives in East Hampton who bought a piece of property and built a house because it was near a big reserve. Well, they changed the flight pattern to come over the reserve because they figured that wouldn't disrupt anyone. She said, I can tell you what they have on. She said, it's so low, it rattles my whole house. She has been one of the most outspoken people going to those meetings about the helicopters landing in East Hampton. And East Hampton was checking with us to see what we were doing at one point or another. So they're not the only ones. I'm out at night walking my dog sometimes at 11 o'clock at night. I'm hearing jets up there. Now, they're not that close, but we have air traffic from Kennedy Airport flying over Long Island, and I'm hearing it at night. Now, so it's, you're right,
No,
Bill, I
it's
don't know
just-
what to say.
If there's something we could do, I'd love to do it, and if there is nothing we can do, I'd love to be able to tell them there's not a blessed thing that we can do, you know?
Elaborate a little bit, there are two, because of all the airport, there's mainly East Hampton, because that's larger, but we get lumped in there. Our traffic is nowhere near that, but we have it. East Hampton Town does have a committee or some task force they set up.
They do.
To address that, and then Southampton Town has one as well. They kind of work in concert. At one point, I believe, when he was here, Mayor Eppley sat in on the one with the town. I don't know if we still have a representative do that.
Okay.
So we did kind of partake in those conversations, and, you know, it's all basically collecting data and complaints and then bringing it to the federal level, you know, our congressmen and senators is really what that boils down to as far as. We individually, from what I understand in the past, as a governing board, really, to answer your question, don't really have a whole hell of a lot of authority to
I'd love to-
change the flight pattern.
If that's the answer, then at least we could tell them, thanks, but no thanks.
What we
you know?
can do is gather, insist, you know, lobby for and so forth. But as a, you know, our authority, you know, we can do quite a bit, but we really can't do a
Well,
lot of that.
Bill, we can dictate approaches and exits, which we do out of the helipad.
And how do you monitor it, you know? It's is it
Because
somebody gonna-
we have I can't remember the name of the company that
We have a company that we pay that monitors.
Really?
They take a picture of
Yeah,
the.
they monitor the approach.
Find somebody or something like
Yes, they
that?
do. They get the,
And we have this
Well, they're
already?
monitoring the landing and how many land and so forth. So,
yeah,
Yeah, because aren't they limited on landings as well?
Yeah, we have a whole,
there's a limitation on time.
Could you get us a description of what the rules are and
you know,
that they're
there's like
enforcing?
times and
But
certain
the whole flight,
seasons of the year.
yes, correct. We did, that was part of what, that, and that came,
After 7
and that was
o'clock
the
at
result,
night,
was
I
part of
think,
those
or-
task force. That's why
Yeah,
we had that.
there's,
I think it's even earlier during the season.
But these people aren't so much talking about that, they're talking about the flight pattern, and that, I don't know, Mayor, do we?
Yeah, no, we
I
do
don't know,
regulate that. We regulate where they can hover, and
Yes,
they...
we do.
Whether they go over the North Fork and that? or
No,
over the
they
ocean?
don't.
That we-
They stay over Shinnecock. I've watched them coming in there. I watched one, I guess Thursday or Friday. They were landing consistently, and the flight outfit that runs most of the helicopters had a gal there in uniform with ID, and she was actually directing everybody to the helicopters and keeping them so that they didn't wander over to a helicopter. She would tell them, this is your flight that's coming in, and then she would bring them across the street and onto the helicopter, and they would take off. In the meantime, the other one would be hovering right over Shinnecock.
That's,
And I-
but
but I
that we
always
can
thought-
dictate how the hover or immediate in the helipad.
Right.
But the question of where they fly, whether they go over the ocean or whether they go over the North Fork, do we have any?
I thought that we
No.
had a
Yeah, that's the part I'm saying, Bill, we don't have any
That's FAA.
Yeah, but
purview over that.
I thought at one point we had talked about them coming down the ocean coastline, coming into the Shinnecock Bay via the canal.
They do.
Crossing that way. Oh, so we do have that. And then hovering and waiting to land.
But not all of them do that, because you've got some helicopters that are coming from Connecticut.
Right.
Of course, they
Okay,
come...
but how they come
Right.
from Shinnecock Bay is what we-
I also think that, you cannot, and we will never, ever please everybody
again,
on this,
that's-
because even when we had, remember when the people on Meadow Lane were rightfully so upset because they were actually hovering over Meadow Lane, tilted down, being extremely arrogant, and we had, and I can't remember their name, come and talk to us, and how upset they were, and so then we told them that they had to hover out over Shinnecock. They were not allowed to hover over land.
And they pretty much have done that.
And they have done that, but then you have the people on Shinnecock, on the north side of Shinnecock Bay, upset. And they've come to us too.
Yes, I can remember that.
So
It's a density issue.
It is.
Maybe they could get bigger leaf blowers and that wouldn't make any noise or something and come in anyhow. If there is something we can do, I'd like to know it, and if we're already doing everything we can do, I'd love to be able to just tell them, and
Yeah, we pretty much are doing it. We are monitoring it, and we do have an outfit that does issue violations, because I had gotten a couple of calls over this summer of low-flying helicopters, and I had the tail numbers, and they contacted me.
Yeah, great. Anyhow, that's it for me.
Well, thank you.
Pardon?
I said we got a stop sign, so that's good news.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, first, I want to thank the Planning Commission, because they really have done, on the zoning, they've done an incredible job. They've looked at the pyramid, they've looked at side lots, they have really addressed a lot of the issues, and that takes a lot of time. It's a lot of dedicated time for which they've volunteered for, and we much appreciate it. And Trustee Allen, we appreciate you bringing in on the leaf blowers. We'll take a look at the legislation and see how we can adjust it so it's a little easier to enforce, because it's really, at this point, it's all about enforcement. I think that the village, I would like to see the village move more towards electric, and I know, Nancy, you've been a big proponent of that, and I would like to see if we can move forward on Agawam and make that a green zone, because I think those...
I'd like to make that a green zone, too.
Yeah.
I'd like to really know why they're not using the equipment on other village properties.
They may be, but...
We're not certain whether they are.
I'm not certain they aren't, but I think that, some of the other properties, the depth of the leaves and the wetness and stuff makes it really difficult. But, the leaf blowers...
We'll give them rakes. We're going to give them rakes
Something to lean on.
and give them 3 weeks to get it done.
There may be union regulation on rakes.
Probably.
And to be a green zone, you have to be AXA certified, so it's not something that we can just
No.
designate ourselves, so.
More grasshoppers, we'll get grass rakers.
For the grasshoppers. So I think there's some good stuff that's going on. A lot of these issues always come to a peak in the summer months, and it's constantly a density issue, and we can try to do these different things and change locations and move things. It's like vehicles. We have an incredible amount of through traffic in the village. We can move them off Prospect Street, but they're going to end up on Ox Pasture, so it's...
All you're doing is displacing it. You're not...
You're right.
So, those are things that we got to further address and take a look, but they're really density issues. Although I do think that eventually we're going to have to do a traffic study.
Yeah.
And every time I've read a traffic study, it's the same thing. They tell you there's traffic. I know that.
When's the last time we had one done? Did we have one done?
Had one done.
We've had them done individually, like at the
certain
ambulance
spots.
barn
Right,
and so
okay.
forth, and they always do the same thing. There's traffic.
You're right. Simply put, yeah.
So, I'd like to
They never really
find
offer a lot
somebody
of
to do a
solutions.
traffic study that can tell me something, but...
And you're right, if you try and push the traffic from one neighborhood, it goes to another. It's not
It
like...
just displaces it. A
Yeah.
lot of people think that we're going to be able to implement some strategy that is going to alleviate. It doesn't. It may in one spot. It just displaces it elsewhere. You're not removing the people. This is just a fact.
So we still have a bunch of stuff that we got to attack. But moving ahead, any comments from the public? Oh, no.
I just wanted to see you guys at work in the dark areas. There's nothing going on there. This is great. It's nice to listen. I see Eileen at work. I keep track of her phone. First grade substitute. Thank you, Alan.
Well, she did great tonight. She did absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Come on up, Alan.
In terms of replacing the
You
barrel.
got to speak in the microphone.
You're just speaking.
This is off the record in terms of replacing the barrel in this board. I'm doing it at least temporarily. And it was arranged Friday by the president that I'm probably not going to go to Singapore.
Well, that's a
It's
relief.
easier to commute to keep going to those board meetings.
Oh,
Good. So we're going to see Katie.
Pick it up. What happened to her was that, I'll tell you in 6 months. That looks like we're not going to Singapore.
okay.
People ask me all the time, what's happening to zoning? So the two questions are, what's happening, meaning, must use zoning as a code. Building,
What color is the beach permit?
but the other question is, who can you get out here to go to work on the boards that doesn't, like 90% of the village, have a conflict of interest because the brokers or lawyers are involved? Well, council knows all of that. Everybody here, the village has made a living for 150 years of the transfer of real estate. So everybody has a conflict. The question is, how do you deal with it? How do you protect them? All the time, everybody. Non-village, people in Florida, speculators, flippers, hedge funds putting up capital. Everybody's involved. This is such a great market. You can't get away from it. The question is, who can you get to sort of arbitrate the rough spots?
If we have 10 more days in the stock market like we had today, you know.
We won't have to worry about it.
That's true.
Down 1,000.
It's down again?
You know, all the guys with computers, it's going to be a yo-yo for a while. It'll be great.
The Donald will save us, I know it.
there you go.
Easy. Federal Reserve. The co-op, the Treasury, they'll do it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, so
With that, motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters involving village employees.
motion
So moved.
and second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, aye. It's in their eyes, it's me.
Okay.